All right, we're going to go ahead and walk through several of these battles. I'm going to, use these maps in the book. This is from Chapter 19 of the American Republic book. It's toward the end of it in the final section. I'm going to walk through it a little bit, so that way we can, get an idea of the maps and the position of the troops, or whatever the case may be. And of course, this one we're looking at Pearl Harbor, 1941, December 7th. We have a little bit of a legend here. Raise that up so everybody can see the legend a little bit better. We have a little bit of a legend there. Hopefully everybody can see that clearly. I realize it's not the most ideal situation based on where you're seated or the angle you're at, but hopefully you can see most of this. And I want to walk through this a little bit. Again, I think we looked at this map previously. If not, we'll take a few moments. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Let's start with the legend. We have the red line are the first wave of aircraft to strike the Hawaiian targets, and then the blue line would be the second wave. And so what we have here, right here is the first. And again, you got to keep in mind it's not shown here because again, the size of the map. But the planes actually flew, kind of from someplace over here, and they kind of flew that path. And then, of course, the second one, sort of the same thing. They kind of flew that path to attack the Hawaiian Islands. Now, again, the reason why this was done is to sort of throw off the Americans, as we saw in the movie Pearl Harbor. Very early in the clip I showed you, the radar, and of course the radar was located right there. The radar picked up this large haze, is a term the young man used, of planes. And he was told by his superior that there was a flight of B-19s, which is a type of bomber, coming in from the mainland. And, of course, the mainland is in that direction. So the Japanese did this to fool us. And again, it worked pretty well. So let's walk through this a little bit. The original one, and I realize it's difficult to see, the first flight, right over here, started about 7:51 a.m. The second flight started about 8:55, and it's mentioned right there. Again, I realize a little bit difficult to see where you're at. Then you, of course, have all the different symbols over here, which we're not really going to worry about each and every one of them. But as you can see here, the first flight here in red breaks into several different groups, and they go into several different attacks. This one comes all the way around here to attack the main base there at Pearl Harbor. Here's another group breaking off there. Here's a group breaking off and coming this direction, going over here and attacking several key points. Now they're either bases, air bases here, 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 and here, or again, of course, the main one. Let me get rid of some of that mess. The main, of course, attack was right here at Pearl Harbor. Here we have Battleship Row, which is mentioned during the video I showed you on Pearl Harbor. We saw them, all the battleships, all the ships lined up next to each other. It was done this way, not because it was smart, because it really wasn't. It's horrible if you are undergoing an aerial attack. Putting all your ships together, putting all your planes together in one place is a horrible idea if there's an aerial attack. Now, again, we never expected an aerial attack. We put them together like that in order to protect us from sabotage. That is what we felt would be the biggest threat to our naval base at Pearl Harbor, would be sabotage, not an all-out attack by 300 plus airplanes. So what would work great against sabotage was horrible for the attack that took place in Pearl Harbor on December the 7th. Our second wave, as you can see here, again, we have several different directions that they took. Again, by and large, all centering here at Pearl Harbor. And again, this was about 8:55 in the morning. In total, we had about 305 Japanese aircraft that participated. And you can see we have a couple of deviations where they're attacking different air bases. The whole idea was, number one, we have to take out Japanese point of view, we have to take out the ships at Pearl Harbor. We, the United States, got lucky because there were no aircraft carriers. They had set sail a week or so earlier. When the Japanese sailed from Japan heading toward Pearl Harbor to attack us, our aircraft carriers have been there. Their spies in Hawaii had confirmed this. Once the Japanese fleet sailed, they were in communications blackout. They did not send any messages. They did not receive any messages, because if they did, then we might have been able to pinpoint them. We may have been able to track the messages to their ships, which then, of course, would have ruined the surprise attack. So in the time since they left till they got to Pearl Harbor, our aircraft carriers had set sail, and they were spared any damage, which, of course, then allows us to participate in a much more aggressive manner in the war. All right, this is our second battle we're going to look at. This is the Battle of Midway. I'm sorry, forgive me. This is the Doolittle raid. Forgive me, this is Doolittle. And what we have here, and the little map over here, which I know is difficult to see, but we have our aircraft carriers starting over here at Pearl, and they're flying toward Japan, or sailing toward Japan, and then somewhere around here, they're going to launch their aircraft, bomb Japan, and then fly to safety in China. We've talked about how the Japanese had invaded China several years earlier, and so there were allies of ours in China. We talked about the Flying Tigers. Now, the Flying Tigers were American pilots who volunteered to fight against the Japanese with the Chinese in China. So we had allies in China. The idea was we would sail our ships, the bombers would take off, we'll talk about that in a moment, bomb Japan, fly to China, where they would then be refueled and able to fly elsewhere, and then participate in the war later on. Now, there's a problem. Okay? First off, let's look at a couple of things, and we'll get to the whole mission. You take a look right here at the date. April 18th, 1942. April is the 4th month of the year. Pearl Harbor took place on December 7th, 1941. So we're looking at about 5 months after Pearl Harbor, we launch an invasion of, well, sorry, invasion is the wrong word. We launch an attack upon Tokyo, which is the capital city of Japan. 5 months after our ships had been devastated, our fleet had been devastated, 18 ships had been damaged or completely destroyed at Pearl Harbor. We lost hundreds of ships, thousands of men. Many of them were pilots or mechanics or whatever the case may be. And so we were hurting badly. But we needed to send a message to the Japanese. We needed to send a message to the Americans. To the Japanese, we're telling them, we can reach out and touch you. We can reach out and kill you. We can attack you anytime we want. We're not out of this war. To the American public, we're telling the same thing. We're not out of this war. Yeah, they got in the first blow, and it was a hard one. It was a hurtful one. We're still feeling the pain, but we are still in this war. We can still win this war. And this mission told that to the Americans. We're still in it. There's still hope. We're not going to lie down and die. Okay, so here we have a picture of Colonel Doolittle, who led the raid. It's a little bit difficult to see. That is the B-25 bomber. And I'll show you a little bit of a video later on, hopefully today, in which we'll take a look at some bombers. B-25 bombers are not designed to take off and land on aircraft carriers. So what happened is that we took these bombers and we stripped them down, everything they didn't need, to make them lighter. I'm not going to go into the aerodynamics of flight, but the heavier the aircraft, the less likely it is to take off. The heavier it is, the more powerful the engines, the longer the runway it needs. I think the runways in the aircraft carrier is about 300 feet, give or take. And so they stripped it down. They carried a few bombs. They took off, which again had never been done before, dropped their bombs, and then flew on to China. So again, this has never been done before. Let's go a little bit further into this. Let's have some more fun with this and show how much difficult this was. as it states about right here, a little bit difficult to read right there. The Japanese aircraft discovered the carriers about 150 miles away from the place they were supposed to launch from. So our planes had to launch early, which means they had to fly an extra 150 miles. That, of course, made it more difficult. As it was, they were going to launch from a point where they would have enough fuel to reach their target, bomb their target, fly on to China, land, refuel, and have a little bit of fuel left over. Because, again, if you're a pilot, the worst thing in the world is looking at a gas gauge that says empty. Because it's not like there's a gas station in the air. So, they had to launch early. They didn't know if they could do it. And in fact, a couple of planes ran out of gas and essentially had to crash in China. Okay. 80 men flew off. 71 returned. I realize that may be a little bit difficult for you to see right there. But of the 80 crew members who were on the bombers, including Colonel Doolittle himself, he led the raid, 71 came back, which means 9 did not. They either died as their plane crashed due to a lack of fuel, or potentially due to damage from the ground as they're being fired upon, or they were captured and killed by the enemy once they landed. So the Doolittle raid, April 18th, 1942, about 5 months after Pearl Harbor, sent a message to the Japanese that we, the United States, will fight. It sent this message to the American public, we are going to fight, we're going to win. Our next battle is the Battle of Midway. Again, I realize it's a little bit difficult to read from somewhere where some of you are at, but this is June of 42. June is the 6th month, so we're looking at about 7 months after Pearl Harbor. About 2 months after the Doolittle raid. So, here we have it, and we can see the legend down here. In red would be the Japanese, in blue would be the Americans. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of walk you through this a little bit. Again, I'm going to read some of the events to you because you may not be able to easily see this. Of course, this is in the book. This is in the American Republic book in chapter 20. But I'm going to walk you through it a little bit. Let us start with number 1. Before we do that, let's take a quick look. Here's the Japanese fleet, and you can see it in the path it took. All right, and let's kind of look at the battle sequence. We're starting over here with number 1, and this was about 4:30 a.m. About 4:30 a.m. The Japanese aircraft carriers launch about 108 aircraft to strike the Midway Islands. Now again, here's Midway right over here. Hawaii is in that direction. The United States is in that direction. You can see the inset over here where Midway is located. It's that little red dot. I mean, I realize it's a little bit difficult to see, but you can see where it is. So, about 4:30 in the morning, the Japanese launch their first wave of aircraft to attack Midway Island. And, of course, there is the island right there. Number 2 right here, about 6:16 a.m., a couple hours, almost 2 hours after the launch, U.S. fighters clashed with the attackers, and that would be right there. We send out planes from Midway. There's a slight aerial battle. Number 3 right here, about 6:30, still in the morning, the Japanese begin bombing Midway right there. Number 4, right there, okay. About 7:08 in the morning, U.S. flyers from Midway began attacking the Japanese fleet. So we send planes, and get right here, this line right there, begin to attack the Japanese fleet. There were 4 aircraft carriers, and of course the assorted ships that go with them. Ships that carry extra fuel, extra food, destroyers, battleships, other ships, again, that make up a fleet in and around an aircraft carrier. All right, let me erase that so it's just easier to see. That was number 4, and we go to number 5. About 9:17 in the morning, Japanese planes return to the fleet to engage U.S. carriers. So, and you can see where that is right here. Well, here are the aircraft carriers, and they make a turn that way so they can engage the American fleet, which is over here. Number 6, right here, about 10:22 to 10:28 or so, U.S. dive bombers score direct hits on the Kaga, the Akagi, and the Soryu. That is 3 of the aircraft carriers, and here they are right over there. Number 7 right here, about noon, about 12 o'clock, give or take, planes from the Hiryu attack U.S. carrier Yorktown, and they hit it. And here is the Yorktown right there. And you can see sort of the movement of the Yorktown as it's moving around trying to evade Japanese attack. The ship is abandoned but remains afloat. So enough damage is done to the Yorktown that it is abandoned. It is still floating, but it is abandoned. That takes us to number 8 up here. About 5:01 p.m., the Yorktown Flyers join the Enterprise being the other aircraft carrier there, attack on the Hiryu, setting it ablaze. And here is that. And eventually it comes this way, and it does sink right there. And it sinks right there. Which takes us to our last one, number 9. About 1:31, give or take, the Japanese submarine, and it gives the number there, it's not really important to us, torpedoes the Yorktown, which sinks the next morning. So again, here we have direct hits on 3 of the 4 aircraft carriers, and they sink. We have another attack over here. It escapes. Here's where it's first attacked. It escapes here, and then it is sunk right there. The American carrier, there we go, Yorktown, is attacked and is sunk by a Japanese submarine. So what we have are, let's keep total here, okay. Sorry, I don't know why I have circles there. There we go. So we have, get out of the way, 4 Japanese carriers, U.S. 2. Okay, that's how many participating. Japanese lose all 4, we lose 1. So the Japanese lose all 4 of their carriers, we lose 1. It is a tremendous victory for the United States. Yay, go fight, win us. Here is the map of the Bataan Death March. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because it's not really a battle, but it is mentioned in the vocabulary terms in the chapter. I do want to mention it. As you can see down here, and I realize it is a touch small. But what we're seeing down here is the legend. The blue line would be the U.S. retreat to Bataan, and that's kind of coming this direction. And then you can see the Japanese forces as they're moving around, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to look at the whole thing. But what we're looking at is the roughly 60-mile journey that the Americans were forced to take under extremely arduous and difficult conditions. We talked about how about a half of them died in the process, whether it be to disease, lack of proper medical care. They were just too tired and fell by the wayside, and they were left to die or killed by the Japanese troops who were escorting them to Bataan. And so again, it's not a battle, but I did think it should be mentioned, so there it is. All right, our next map is island hopping, and this is from 42 through 45. You can see there at the top of the page the dates. And again, I realize this is not the best map. This is still in Chapter 20. And I think we've taken a look at this. We looked at the chapter earlier, and it's something you should probably go back and look at. And so let's take a quick look at some of the key things here. I don't want to go into a lot of depth and detail because it's not really necessary, but I do want to point out a few things. Number one, let's take a quick look at, there's Midway Island. We talked about its battle. Here is Hawaii. And of course, if you go in that direction, you will find the United States. Here is the home island of Japan. And this red line indicates the amount of territory that the Japanese held at the height of their power in the Pacific. You can see huge chunks of China, southeastern Asia here, a series of these islands. Of course, a whole bunch of these islands right in here are all under Japanese control at one time or another during the height of their power. So the concept of island hopping is really pretty simple. Starting with Pearl, and of course you can see down here the blue line indicates that this is Allied forces, American forces. We set sail from here, and we went from island to island to island to island to island, always trying to get closer to Japan. Now the reason for this is pretty simplistic. We are trying to get close enough to Japan to use long-range, land-based bombers to attack them. And we're not going to walk through each and every battle because there are a lot of them. I think we will talk about and maybe look at a couple scenes from one or two of them. But the two that we're really going to look at, which leads us really to the atomic bombs being dropped in Nagasaki, Hiroshima. Here is Iwo Jima, and there was Okinawa. And I think I've mentioned those in a vocabulary video, so I'm not going to go into a lot of great depth. But all these island hopping campaigns were extremely torturous. They were extremely brutal, very bloody, vicious, in some cases hand-to-hand fighting. That cost us tens of thousands of troops. Far more Japanese died at the hands of the the Allied troops, mostly American, but there were some other of our allies there. Once we get to Okinawa, Iwo Jima, as you can imagine, the closer they are to the Japanese homeland, the more heavily defensed they would be. Over 20,000 Japanese died defending Iwo Jima. From there, we're able to launch our nuclear attack on Hiroshima, however you wish to pronounce it, on August the 6th, and then 3 days later, August the 9th at Nagasaki. So the whole idea going here, there, was to get here, so we can bomb there. Now, could we have just set sail right there? Well, yeah, maybe. I hate my arrows. That's not any better, is it? Okay. The idea of all this is, the idea was to get close enough so we could then attack Japan using land-based long-range bombers, which is what we did. All right, we're going to look at our last map, which is the D-Day landing at Normandy. And you can see the little inset down here. This is the United Kingdom, Great Britain, England, and Normandy, the beach right here. And it was divided into these 5 different segments. You had Sword, Juno, Gold Beach, okay? And so each part of the beach was divided and then further subdivided. I'm going to show you sometime the next day or two the opening scenes from the battle, from the movie Saving Private Ryan, the D-Day landing scenes, about 20, 25 minutes or so. We'll take a look at that maybe tomorrow after we discuss the Holocaust. But anyway, the point of all this is, this is what it looked like. That's the bigger picture. Let us now take a look at the smaller picture. And so here we are. We have a little bit of a better look at it, hopefully. Over here, we have the amphibious assault craft that are waiting their turn to storm the beach. Here we have a particular part of the beach. I think this is Sword Beach. And what we have done is then further divide it into smaller subsections. So over here we have dog green, dog white, red dog. We have easy green, easy red, easy white. Okay, so the beach was divided into 5 sections, and then those 5 sections were divided into smaller sections. And so here we have the amphibious assault craft. They come here, wait their turn, they go drop off their men, they come back over here, they get more men, and then they repeat it again and again and again. The idea was to pour as many men as possible on the beach, more men than the Germans can kill. Once they have done that, and again we have all of this right here. Again, this is just one small part of the 5 parts of the beach that we saw looking at the inset a moment ago. Once that is done, we have enough bodies here, we then move inland, killing anything in our path. Any German resist us, we kill them. It's that simple. Once we're able to get past, let me move this a little bit. Once we're able to get past the beach, once we're able to put enough men on the beach where we can overcome the defensive positions, and again, the Germans are all up in here. I mean, they have machine gun nests, they have bazooka teams, they have pillboxes, they have artillery, they have defenses on the beach, obstacles on the beach, barbed wire, on and on and on. So once we're able to, again, kill all these puppies right here on our beach, we then link up with the guys over here. In fact, let's just make that a different color. That'd be so much prettier. Okay, they come over here. This group comes over here. They meet, and we have love. No, we have a larger force. And then we wipe out all those puppies. And we move forward. And then we link up with the ones over here. We link up with the ones over here, and we move forward. Just to give you an idea, there were timelines. By the end of the day, by midnight the first day, we were supposed to have covered that much territory. Here is midnight of the second day. That's where we were supposed to have been. Now, again, did we keep those time schedules? No. A huge chunk of our equipment, a large number of our men, never got off the ships. The amphibious and solid craft. Again, when I show you the scene, if you've ever seen Saving Private Ryan, you know what I'm talking about. If you've never seen it, I'll show you a clip probably tomorrow on Friday that will then depict this, and you'll understand why. But a lot of our men never got off. A lot of the equipment they needed never got off the ships, never got out of the English Channel. And so things were slowed down. But again, that is the whole idea behind the Normandy D-Day landing. All right, that's been the major battles of World War II.